People are very sensitive about what they eat. Now, you can talk to people about exercising, and you can talk to people about relaxation. They will accept that. But you talk to them about what they're eating, and people are very sensitive about that. My folks were farmers, but it never appealed to me to eat animal products. I never did drink milk by the glass. So I was naturally inclined toward a vegetable type of diet, but I was concerned about the adequacy of the nutrition. And when I found out that I could get by taking a little vitamin B12, why, of course, I became entirely vegan. I think that it has been a very fine form of nutrition. When I was in practice, I would tell the patients that the vegetable-based diet was the healthy way to go. As much as possible, we keep away from the animal products.
Let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you woke up feeling genuinely good? Not just functional, not just managed, not okay for my age. Actually, it's good. Clear-headed, strong, like your body was working with you instead of against you. Because most people watching this right now cannot remember that feeling, and most of them have quietly accepted that this is just what getting older feels like. Slower, heavier, more medicated, more managed, more inevitable. But what if that acceptance was the biggest mistake you ever made? What if the decline you have normalized, the fatigue, the inflammation, the creeping fear of what the next diagnosis might be, was not inevitable at all? What if it was simply the food? Drop your country in the comments right now. Where are you watching this from? Because what I am about to show you belongs to every single person in this community, regardless of where they are starting from. There was a man in Loma, California. A doctor, one of the most decorated surgeons of the 20th century. 12,000 operations, a career that took him from California to Pakistan to Vietnam. At 95, still driving 60 miles to assist in heart surgeries. At 100, still mowing his own lawn. He died in 2018. He was 104 years old. No cancer, no heart disease, no dementia. And the secret he pointed to was not a drug, not a supplement, not an expensive protocol. It was something sitting in your grocery store right now that most people walk past without a second thought. His name was Dr. Ellsworth Wareham. And in the next 15 minutes, his story and the science behind the community he lived in is going to permanently change the way you think about what you eat and how long you live. Stay with us. Before the food, before science, before any study or statistic, you need to understand what Dr. Ellsworth Wareham saw with his own hands. Because he was not a wellness influencer. He was not a nutritionist writing books from a comfortable office.
What's your diet? My diet? Yeah. Well, I'm a vegan. Now, it used to be that vegans were considered to be sort of in the fringe, you know. Those are people that are sort of extreme, you know, they'd be here, dairy products. But I want to point out to you that when Esselstyn and Ornish reversed coronary artery disease, they reversed it. Coronary artery disease kills 1/3 of the people in the United States, and they reversed it. You just stop and think about that. See, what did they do it on? They did it on a vegan, low-fat diet. You see, the only two people who've ever demonstrated in the laboratory, that is by coronary angiography, that they can arrest and reverse coronary artery.
He was a cardiothoracic surgeon. His hands spent decades literally inside human chests, opening hearts, repairing valves, bypassing arteries so blocked that blood could barely pass through them. He knew the human cardiovascular system the way most people know their own kitchen. And over 12,000 operations, he noticed something. Something nobody needed to explain to him with a graph or a peer-reviewed paper. Something he could feel with his fingertips while his hands were inside someone's chest. Meat eaters' arteries were hard, stiff, calcified, crunchy to the touch, like a corroded pipe that had been slowly filling with debris for decades. Plant eaters' arteries were different, supple, flexible, elastic, alive in a way the others simply were not. He became vegan after noticing exactly that, the profound physical difference between the arteries of people who ate plants and people who ate meat. Not a theory, not a hypothesis, his own hands, inside 12,000 patients, telling him the truth in the most undeniable language possible. He went plant-based immediately, and he ate that way every single day for the next 50 years. 2 meals a day, at 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Simple, clean, consistent. And the body that system built carried him to 104 without cancer, without heart disease, without dementia, working alongside younger surgeons until he was 95 years old. Now here is why his story is not just inspiring. It is scientifically documented, and it is happening all around him, in an entire community that has been quietly proving the same thing for generations. Loma Linda, California. From the outside, it looks like any other small American city. 40 miles east of Los Angeles, warm, quiet, unremarkable from the highway. But step inside the data, and Loma Linda becomes one of the most scientifically extraordinary places on Earth. It is the only blue zone in the United States, one of just 5 places on the entire planet where people regularly live past 100 in exceptional health. Dan Buettner of National Geographic identified it. Researchers have been studying it for decades, and what they keep finding refuses to be explained away. Here is the number that should stop every person watching this completely. In the United States, right now, 1 in every 3 adults will develop some form of cancer in their lifetime. Not in a particularly bad year, not as an outlier statistic, as the baseline, as what we have collectively decided to call normal. In Loma Linda, same country, same state, same air, same hospitals, the Adventist Health Study 2 tracked 69,120 people across 7 years, one of the largest dietary studies ever conducted in North America. Vegetarian Adventists showed 16% lower incidence of all cancers combined. Gastrointestinal cancers dropped 26%. Colorectal cancer specifically dropped 22%. The same disease, the same country, dramatically different outcomes. And it is not genetics. These people came from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different family histories. The one thing they shared was their plate. Their daily, consistent, unremarkable, boringly repeated plate. Dr. Wareham was not an exception inside Loma Linda. He was the example of what this community produces when its principles are followed completely and consistently for an entire lifetime. So what exactly are those principles? And why do they work at the biological level in a way that supplements, screenings, and medications never have? Before I tell you what to eat, I need to tell you what to stop. Because there is an industry worth tens of billions of dollars that has built itself on a promise so seductive and so thoroughly marketed that even the most health-conscious people in this audience have accepted it without ever questioning it. The supplement promise. Vitamin E capsules, high-dose beta-carotene, concentrated vitamin C. The entire premise is this: if antioxidants in whole plants protect against cancer and aging, then isolating those compounds and delivering them in a pill should give you the same protection. That logic sounds completely reasonable. It is not just wrong, it is harmful. The SELECT trial, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2011, followed 35,000 healthy men taking vitamin E supplements. The men who supplemented with vitamin E had a statistically significant increase in prostate cancer risk. The researchers stopped the trial early because of what they were seeing. The same vitamin E that consistently shows protective effects when consumed in whole foods, in almonds, in avocados, in leafy greens, increased cancer risk when isolated and delivered at pharmaceutical dose in a capsule. And the beta-carotene data is equally damning. The CARROT trial showed that beta-carotene supplementation was associated with increased lung cancer risk in smokers. These are not fringe findings published in obscure journals. These are major controlled trials, tens of thousands of participants, published in the most respected medical publications in the world. The people of Loma Linda do not take these supplements. They never have. Their protection does not come from a bottle. It comes from the biological synergy of whole foods, where every compound arrives embedded in a matrix of cofactors, polyphenols, fiber, and minerals that collectively regulate how the body uses them. When you isolate one compound and deliver it at pharmaceutical dose, you remove all of that regulatory context. The body does not know how to use it the same way. The protective effect does not just disappear, it can invert. Here is what nobody selling you a supplement will ever tell you. You cannot buy the Loma Linda effect. You cannot bottle it. You cannot replicate 50 years of whole food eating with a morning handful of capsules. The Adventists eat, and what they eat every single day is the most powerful anti-cancer, anti-aging, biological protocol ever documented in a living human population. Here is exactly what it is. And if this channel is giving you the real science that the supplement industry spends billions trying to drown out, subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell, because this is what Senior Spring Vitality exists to do every single week. The foundation of the Loma Linda system is not a superfood. It is not an expensive ingredient shipped from the other side of the world. It does not require a subscription or a special preparation method or a nutritionist to explain. It is legumes, beans, lentils, chickpeas, eaten as the primary protein source of every single day. Not occasionally, not as a side dish, every day, consistently, for decades. When the Adventist Health Study 2 tried to identify the single dietary factor most correlated with reduced cancer incidence in this population, they did not land on turmeric, they did not land on green tea or exotic berries, or any of the trendy compounds that dominate the wellness conversation. They landed on legumes. And the mechanism runs through 3 channels simultaneously. First, fiber. Specifically soluble fiber that ferments in the colon and produces short-chain fatty acids. Most importantly, butyrate. Butyrate is the preferred fuel of the cells lining your colon. When those cells are well fed with butyrate, they maintain structural integrity and suppress abnormal cell growth. When butyrate is absent, which it is in a standard low-fiber Western diet, the colon lining becomes vulnerable to the kind of cellular damage that precedes cancer. This is not theoretical. This is the direct physiological link between a low-fiber diet and colorectal cancer that researchers have been documenting for decades. Second, the microbiome. Legumes are prebiotic. They selectively feed the beneficial bacterial strains that produce anti-inflammatory compounds and crowd out the strains associated with tumor-promoting inflammation. The Adventists of Loma Linda did not build their diet around microbiome science. They built it around their culture and their faith. But their daily legume habit has been feeding a protective microbial environment for generations, and the science eventually caught up to explain why it works. Third, phytic acid. This one is almost never discussed in mainstream nutrition conversations. Legumes contain phytate, a compound that acts as a chelating agent, binding to free iron in the digestive tract. Excess free iron is a catalyst for oxidative stress. It accelerates the production of free radicals that damage DNA. Researchers documented in the 1990s that phytic acid reduces tumor cell proliferation in laboratory models. The NIH Cancer Database cites this work. And yet, mainstream nutrition advice often lists phytic acid as an anti-nutrient to avoid. That is a misreading of the evidence. In a diet with sufficient mineral diversity, the chelating effect is protective, not harmful. The Adventists have been eating phytate-rich foods daily for generations. Their cancer numbers reflect that. What does this look like in practice? Half a cup of cooked legumes at your midday meal, every day. Black beans, lentils, or chickpeas, whichever you prefer. That is Tier 1. That is where Dr. Wareham's community started, and it is where you start today. Tier 1 builds the foundation. Tier 2 is what amplifies it into something the research did not fully expect to find. Two specific compounds, working together, and one modern habit that systematically cancels both of them out. The first compound is curcumin. In the Adventist community of Loma, a significant portion of the population has South Asian heritage. And in South Asian cooking, turmeric is not a wellness trend. It is not something added to a smoothie for Instagram. It is a daily baseline ingredient in curries, in lentil soups, in rice dishes, in sauces. These households have been consuming curcumin daily in food form for their entire lives. In 2007, researchers at MD Anderson Cancer Center published a landmark paper documenting the molecular mechanism of curcumin's anti-cancer activity. Curcumin inhibits NF-kappa B, the master transcription factor that activates genes related to inflammation and cancer cell proliferation. When NF-kappa B is chronically activated, which it is in people eating a pro-inflammatory Western diet, it creates the precise molecular environment in which cancer cells grow, divide, and resist programmed cell death. Curcumin disrupts that environment at the signaling level. But here is the critical detail that most people miss. Curcumin on its own has poor absorption in the gut, which is where the second compound comes in. Piperine, found in black pepper, increases the bioavailability of curcumin by approximately 2,000%. That is not a misprint, 2,000%. The combination of turmeric and black pepper is not a wellness influencer invention. It is a biochemically documented synergy that South Asian cooking discovered centuries before anyone understood the mechanism behind it. A quarter teaspoon of turmeric and a pinch of black pepper added to any warm dish. That is the daily dose. That is all it takes. The second amplifier is garlic. Allicin, the active compound in garlic, is a documented modulator of the gut microbiome. It promotes the growth of beneficial lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains while actively suppressing pathogenic bacteria. It also carries direct anti-inflammatory properties that complement everything legumes are doing through the butyrate pathway. Loma households use garlic consistently, not as a flavor accent, but as a daily functional ingredient, raw or lightly cooked, 4 or more times per week. That is where the protective evidence sits. Together, legumes, turmeric, black pepper, and garlic, you now have 60% of the most documented longevity system in North American research history. The final 40% is where this becomes something the researchers themselves did not fully anticipate. Go back to the AHS2 data on breast cancer. Adventist vegetarian women in Loma had 34% lower risk of breast cancer compared to non-Adventist women of the same age in California. Same state, same demographics, 34% lower. The researchers tried to isolate the single factor driving that number. They found 3 correlated variables: absence of processed meat, high intake of unprocessed soy, including tofu and edamame, and daily legume consumption. But the variable with the most consistent correlation across multiple statistical models was not any single element. It was the combination, the system. This is the insight that most people permanently miss. They read a headline about beans and cancer prevention, They add beans to their diet twice a week while changing nothing else. They wonder why nothing changes, and they conclude that the research must have been exaggerated. But that is not the Loma-Linda protocol. The Loma-Linda protocol is a system where every element amplifies the others. Here is how the complete system works at the cellular level. Legumes feed the microbiome and produce butyrate, protecting the colon lining and suppressing abnormal cell growth. Turmeric and black pepper inhibit NF-kappa B, shutting down the inflammatory signaling that allows cancer cells to evade programmed death. Garlic supports the specific bacterial strains that produce secondary anti-inflammatory metabolites in the gut. Unprocessed soy provides isoflavones, plant compounds that modulate estrogen receptor activity and reduce hormonal stimulation of breast tissue. And the complete absence of processed meat removes the nitrosamines and heme iron compounds that directly damage colon cell DNA. Each element does something specific. Together, they create an internal biological environment where cancer cells do not get the inputs they need to establish and grow. Remove inflammation. Remove the cellular damage triggers. Feed the systems that suppress abnormal growth. Do it every day for decades.
The body does the rest. Now, the ingredient I told you about at the very beginning, the one that almost no dietitian mentions when they discuss cancer prevention, the one that the entire wellness industry has a financial incentive to never talk about. It is not a food. It is consistency. Dr. Ellsworth Wareham was not eating a plant-based diet because he had read the AHS2 data. He was eating that way because it was his culture, his community, his identity. The people around him ate the same way. The social structure of his life made consistency the default rather than the exception. He did not need willpower. He did not need motivation. He did not need a 30-day challenge or a New Year's resolution. He just ate the same way he had always eaten, every single day, for 50 years. And this is the truth the data keeps pointing to that the wellness industry will never sell you, because it cannot be packaged, branded, or sold at a premium. Half a cup of legumes once a week does very little. Half a cup every day for 10 years restructures your microbiome, lowers your chronic inflammation baseline, changes how your body responds to cellular stress at a level that shows up on blood tests as measurable, documented improvement. The mechanism only works if you never stop. Dr. Wareham understood this not as a discipline, but as a lifestyle. The same way you do not need motivation to brush your teeth every morning because it is simply what you do. He did not need motivation to eat his beans. It was simply who he was. That identity, that quiet, daily, unremarkable repetition, built a body that carried one of the greatest surgical minds of the 20th century to 104 years old with full cognitive function, physical independence, and zero chronic disease. That is what is available on the other side of consistency. Let me bring this together into something you can start using today, not next month, today. The Loma-Linda system has 3 tiers. Each one builds on the previous. Each one adds a layer of protection that compounds over time. Tier 1, the foundation. Half a cup of cooked legumes at your midday meal every single day. Black beans, lentils, or chickpeas, whichever you prefer. Rotate between them across the week to broaden the spectrum of prebiotic fibers and phytate compounds you are getting. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric and a pinch of black pepper to every warm dish you cook. And remove processed meat from your routine completely. Not reduced, gone. The evidence linking processed meat to colorectal cancer is among the strongest dietary associations in all of oncology research. This is non-negotiable in the Loma-Linda approach. Tier 2, the Amplifier. Incorporate garlic 4 times per week, raw or lightly sautéed, not fried to the point of browning where the allicin compounds degrade. If you are currently taking isolated antioxidant supplements, vitamin E capsules, high-dose beta-carotene, concentrated vitamin C, stop. You now understand why. You are potentially counteracting what the food-based compounds in Tier 1 are building. Tier 3, the complete system. Legumes at every main meal. Hummus on seeded toast in the morning. Lentil soup at lunch. Chickpea salad at dinner. That is 3 half-cup servings across the day, which mirrors the highest protection group in the AHS2 data. Remove red meat entirely. Rebuild your protein around legumes, nuts, and unprocessed soy. And at 90 days, get a blood panel. Specifically, ask your doctor for C-reactive protein, which is the primary marker of systemic inflammation. Measure where you started. See where you are. Because this system does not require you to take anything on faith. It produces measurable biological change that shows up on a lab report. Here is what the timeline looks like. In the first 7 days, you will notice digestive changes. This is your microbiome adjusting to a dramatically higher fiber intake. It passes. The fiber is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. In the first 30 days, most people report reduced bloating, better energy stability, and in many cases, reduced joint inflammation that they had accepted as a permanent feature of aging. At 90 days, the C-reactive protein data from dietary intervention studies consistently shows measurable reductions in systemic inflammation markers in people who have made this shift from a standard Western diet. That is not a subjective feeling. That is a number on a lab report that your doctor can verify. You are not fighting disease reactively. You are removing the conditions that allow it to establish in the first place. Inflammation is the environment cancer needs. You are changing the environment. Before the close, let me tell you what Dr. Ellsworth Wareham actually ate. Not a complicated protocol, not an expensive meal plan. 2 meals a day, every day, for 50 years. At 10 a.m., his first meal. Simple plant-based food. Grains, legumes, fruits, whatever was available and in season. Nothing processed. Nothing that his body would have to work hard to recognize. At 4 p.m., his second meal. Similar simplicity. More plants, more fiber, more of the foods that the community around him had been eating in the same pattern for generations. He kept his cholesterol at 117. For context, most cardiologists consider anything under 150 to be heart attack protective territory. Dr. Wareham, a man who spent his career repairing hearts destroyed by arterial plaque, kept his own arteries in the condition he wished he had seen in more of his patients. Supple, clean, alive. At 100 years old. He said it simply in an interview. If your cholesterol is under 150, your chances of getting a heart attack are very low. And he proved it, with his own body, for over a century. Here is what Dr. Ellsworth Wareham's story is really about. Not the 104 years, not the 12,000 surgeries. It is about a doctor who put his hands inside 12,000 human chests, who felt with his own fingers the difference between a body fed by plants and a body fed by processed food, and who made one quiet, private, unremarkable decision in his kitchen, decades before anyone was watching, to never go back, and then kept that decision every single day for 50 years. No drama, no suffering, no complicated system that required a nutritionist and a supplement stack and a 30-day reset. Just beans and lentils and chickpeas and turmeric with black pepper and garlic and the absence of the processed foods that was slowly destroying the arteries of the patients he was trying to save. 2 meals a day, every day, until he was 104 years old. The gap between where you are right now and where Dr. Wareham was, it is not genetics, it is not luck, it is not the number of years already behind you. It is one decision available to you right now, before this video ends. Open your pantry, find 1 can of black beans or 1 bag of lentils. Cook it tonight. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric, add a pinch of black pepper. That is day 1. That is where 50 years of protection begins. That is where Dr. Wareham started. And in 10 years, in 20 years, in the decades your body is still capable of building when you give it what it actually needs, you will look back at this moment as the day something changed. Not because of anything heroic, because of one ordinary meal repeated without exception until it became simply who you are. This is Senior Spring Vitality. We will see you in the next one.